On October 30th, 2012, Disney officially closed the deal with George Lucas and purchased Lucasfilm along with Star Wars for $4.05 billion. A few weeks ago marked the 10-year anniversary of that deal. So we are going to look back at the past decade of content and decide whether the sale was a good call or if Disney has failed George Lucas's legacy. Welcome back to Whatever You Want. We review content across all medias of media, movies, TV shows, video games, and beyond to give you the most interesting behind-the-scenes insights, storytelling techniques, all that jazz, and more.
We cover everything from Disney, Pixar, Marvel, DC, Star Wars. Let's just jump into it.
Boosh, here we are. Matt, welcome back. How's it going?
Great to be back. Really excited to talk today.
I think this is our first Christmas-esque episode, like first one dropping in December. So as you can see, Daniel and I got the Christmas sweaters on. And Matt, thank you for pulling together the Christmas colored shirt. I seriously do really appreciate it.
The Christmas red color flannel.
You've got some red on the back, your poster back there.
Like, there we go. I mean, the Targaryens are always ready for Christmas.
I immediately think Christmas when I see Targaryen. Yeah. But yeah, so, I mean, if you're a recurring viewer, you know that anytime we see Matt, it's a Star Wars episode. And like we said in the intro, basically, Andor is wrapped up, and we all felt like this would be a good chance to like review the last 10 years of content for all of like Star Wars that's come out, and just to kind of definitively decide like, have they done a good job, or has Disney failed the legacy of George Lucas? I think that's what we're deciding today. Pretty high stakes.
And who better to decide than us?
Yes, than our unwarranted three white guys.
Like, white guys, yeah.
Yeah. Also, I didn't mention this in the intro, but there are time codes down in the description if you want to jump around to different points in the episode. I usually say that in the intro, but I wanted to be angsty. Wanted to include that disclaimer here. Yeah. So, you guys ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that is like kind of important and not necessarily related to this, but have you guys heard that like Bob Iger is back as the CEO of Disney?
Yeah.
I had not heard about that, no.
Yeah, so Bob Iger, for people like our audience, anyone who doesn't know, he was the CEO of Disney from 2004 to 2020-ish, 2019-ish, I think. He was originally the CEO that bought Lucasfilm. He bought Pixar, he bought Lucasfilm, and he bought Marvel. Those were his like big three purchases, acquisitions that happened under his watch. And then he also got 20th Century Fox like right before he retired. And then he retired and named Bob Chapek, who used to be heads of the Disney parks. He named him as the CEO. So Bob Chapek was the CEO. And Bob Chapek, like kind of out of the blue, was just like let go like a couple weeks ago. And then Bob Iger like jumped back in. It was kind of like a shock. I think some like expense reports came out and like the board was like shocked, and Bob Chapek, people just aren't happy like with his leadership with like admission prices to the parks and also just like the Disney Plus content that's been coming out. So I don't know. I just think that's interesting. Do you guys have any initial thoughts on that? Because I feel like it is related to the Star Wars content.
It's interesting to think about, and I think it's funny. It's went from Bob to Bob. But
we went from Bob to Bob to Bob, back to Bob.
Yeah, it's just Bob. But yeah, no, it's just interesting to think about. Like not everybody holds the same philosophies for when it comes to how to creatively lead. So it's just, you know, it's part of the process.
There's rumors that Bob Iger's coming back to get it ready to sell to Apple, so Apple could own Disney potentially. That's just like a rumor that's been going around, which would be like insane.
That'd be so weird.
They start marketing, get your lightsaber iPhone.
Oh my gosh.
No.
I just like smacked my mic in rage.
You heard it here first, folks.
Hold on, could Apple even afford Disney now? What are both of their like net worths?
I don't know. That is not information I have off the top of my head. Sorry. I think that's what they're figuring out, like what an acquisition would cost if this rumor is true at all. But we're not here to like rag on all the logistics of business of media. We're talking about, is Star Wars, has that been good? And I know I just said we're not going to talk about the logistics, but I do want to talk a little bit about the deal that happened with Lucasfilm, because that does lay the groundwork and explain like what happened. So I've been reading Bob Iger's book. So again, the CEO of Disney, and I just read it, and he talks about the acquisition of Pixar, which happened in like 2004 to 5-ish, and then compare that to the acquisition of Lucasfilm, which was 2012. So Pixar like was bought by Disney for like $7 billion or something like that. And the cliff notes of the deal was basically Pixar would retain its identity. the heads of Pixar, Ed Catmull and John Lasseter, the creative heads and tech heads, would like retain leadership, and pretty much business would be as usual, except they would just have the resources of Disney backing them. So like Disney wasn't going to come in and like dismantle it and do whatever they wanted with it. And so when George Lucas was approached and was like ready to sell Star Wars, he saw that and was like, I want that deal. Like George Lucas wanted to still be on top, have creative control, and just like have the support of Disney behind him. But Disney was basically like, no, that doesn't make sense with your current situation, because Lucasfilm at this point in like 2010, I think it had been like a few years since the last feature film had come out. It was like episode 3 was 2005, and then they had the Clone Wars animated movie, and there was no other like films in development. The only thing I think actively going on was like the Clone Wars series, so it wasn't like as valuable as Pixar was from like a business standpoint in Disney's mind. What basically they wanted to buy was the IP. And so George Lucas was actually like a little upset with this because he wanted to retain creative control, but Disney was like, we cannot like do that, because I think the big thing was Pixar had like multiple directors doing all of their films, like a bunch of films in the pipeline. Lucasfilm just had George Lucas, and that was it. And that wouldn't make sense to spend. They ended up spending $4.05 billion to buy Lucasfilm. It wouldn't make sense to spend that much just for George Lucas to be able to make films whenever he wanted. Basically, like nothing has changed with nothing already in the pipeline. Yeah, so George Lucas was a little upset, but he eventually agreed to those terms. And they were trying to buy it for $3.75 billion, but George Lucas didn't want to sell for less than Marvel, and Marvel was bought for $4 billion. So they bought it for $4.05 billion. So it was technically a little above Marvel. I think that's just a fun little tidbit. Well, I want to hear, what are you guys' thoughts just on Kathleen Kennedy, like as a whole?
I'll admit, I definitely think that she had a rough start. Obviously, the sequels were not what everybody was anticipating the next phase of Star Wars to be. But I will say that and I guess this is a little precursor to my thoughts, I would argue that it has been getting better. So while I have some mixed opinions, I would probably give her some more credit than I think the average Star Wars fan would.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting, because the reason I asked that is because everyone kind of, I think, views Kathleen Kennedy as like destroying the legacy of George Lucas, and like it's all her fault.
The anti-Lucas.
Yeah, but George Lucas actually appointed Kathleen Kennedy himself. I didn't really realize the full logistics of that till I was reading the book, but apparently like Kathleen Kennedy was like a producer for a lot of the movies in like the 80s and 90s, and was like a very powerful producer. I didn't know that. We
saw that in the documentary that we covered.
The ILM documentary, yeah. But George Lucas appointed Kathleen Kennedy as the president of Lucasfilm like just months before the Disney deal went through. Like even though it was like already in talks, but just months before. And Bob Iger and Disney kind of viewed that as like, oh, he's trying to just like put someone in charge so that like will carry out his legacy, even though he's not allowed to be in charge, which kind of felt like a little bit of a weird move. But like, I mean, I personally get it because this is his legacy and he wants to protect it. Yeah. But so basically Disney can't just like fire Kathleen Kennedy as like their first move, especially if it was George Lucas's like last move. So I just think that's like a little interesting, like logistics that like George Lucas appointed her. And yeah, I think it has been turning around. It was a rough start. I really agree with you, Matt. But another term of the deal, the reason that George Lucas eventually came around and decided to sell to Disney was that he wrote 3 scripts or 3 outlines for like a sequel trilogy that or like just some sort of another trilogy of films. And he gave them to Bob Iger, and Bob Iger was like, oh, this is great. But Bob Iger was like very clear, like, we are under no obligation to use these scripts, use your ideas, but we are like happy to consult with you, and we will take these scripts and like look at them, but like we're just want to be clear that we don't have to like use them or your ideas or anything. And George Lucas was like, okay, but he saw like, oh, they're taking my scripts, this is good. And so when the sequel trilogy came out and George Lucas saw that they didn't use his scripts, he was kind of upset. But yeah, so they ended up not really using his scripts. So that's kind of like the groundwork for like how the deal came about. Yeah.
Interesting. Were those OG scripts ever released? Like, or are they readable?
I don't think so. I'm not entirely sure.
What if we had like I never even knew that. That'd be so cool to see like a...
I feel like if they came out, if they were released, everyone would go ballistic and like we would know about it.
Yeah, that's my point. Like, I feel like that'd be so crazy.
I don't know. I feel like they definitely did look at some of Lucas's scripts, especially when making The Force Awakens, but I think they were looking at a different script.
Yeah, that's a good segue because I do want to start talking now about the films
Yeah.
and talk about the sequel trilogy first. And yeah, basically The Force Awakens, I mean, a carbon copy of A New Hope.
Yeah. It was nice because I had that energy. It had the Force Awakens had the energy that a Star Wars film was supposed to have, especially when you're starting up a new trilogy. But yeah, it was kind of just a carbon copy. It was good. I think it was a good film at the end of the day, but it could have been greater had they did something different. Or added at least some kind of difference to it plot-wise. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean, Daniel? The Starkiller base was like 50 times bigger. It's so different.
Bigger is better.
Yeah, size matters.
And I think they kind of a lot of fans going into seeing that movie were more expecting, oh, okay, where are we going to go next? How is this going to transition into something new? And so I think that's where it started to kind of fall flat, just because you had all this anticipation for things are going to be different, things are going to be better, but then they kind of wanted to, because as Jake previously mentioned, they hadn't really released a major Star Wars film in years. So I think part of that strategy was probably to build back up, try to use some of the old methods that worked the first time. I feel that they used too many, and the fans' expectations were very different from what was actually happening.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yep.
I think fans were more forgiving on this first sequel before we knew about the other ones, because we were like, okay, this is a little similar to episode 4, but like it's going to be like a launching point, like you said. Like, I feel like if the last two were good, we'd be a lot more forgiving of episode 7. But yeah, because the last two were what they were, like people aren't. But I think you also touched upon, like, again, kind of regaining the trust of the fans. I think that was a huge thing. That's something that Bob Iger said in his book, that J.J. Abrams and Bob Iger and just like all the Disney team like really had a lot of pressure for this first film to like perform well. And maybe they played it safe too much with copying episode 4 because of that. But because like the public opinion of like Disney is like this kid's franchise, and then Star Wars fans are Star Wars fans, like just getting all riled up about like they don't want Disney to like Disneyify it or like ruin Star Wars. Like that's a huge responsibility and a lot of pressure that Bob Iger and J.J. Abrams said they really felt. Like I can't even imagine how that feels. But and I agree with you, Daniel. Like I don't think it's a bad film. I think there are a lot of cool storylines. It just didn't set up storylines that just didn't get like
Just didn't go anywhere. Yeah.
Go where I would have wanted.
It was like a staircase that didn't lead to anywhere, and it just like drops off. And then because of the next two films, it turns out, oh, it's not just a drop off; it's a whole freaking cliff.
The drop off.
They're going down.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, all right, I'm falling now.
Yeah, the film, like I think it's also interesting though. This film did establish the winter releases though of these movies, because Star Wars had always been a Memorial Day release date. And that was the plan for these films as well. But then because they fell behind schedule and like really wanted to make sure they got it right, they delayed it to December. And then like it became the #1 opening in the world ever. So they were like, oh, maybe we're on to something here. And so, yeah, they kind of just like, they made all the releases that day. Or not that day, that time of year.
Yeah.
All right, so Last Jedi. I know there are a lot of mixed reviews on Last Jedi. What are your guys' reviews on The Last Jedi?
When I first saw The Last Jedi, I did like it. I thought that it was good because I guess at that point my standards had dropped so significantly just after seeing The Force Awakens that I was just like, hey, this is different. I'll take it. I think the biggest thing that I was really wanting to see in The Last Jedi was just the emergence of this villain.
Of Snoke?
And that's what I like. Well, not, I mean, kind of really. Yeah, Snoke was in The Force Awakens and in The Last Jedi, but okay, he was there for maybe 20 minutes, like, if, you know, being generous. Because I feel that that's like an important part of the Star Wars story is like you have to have like a major strong villain that you're fighting against. And The Force Awakens, that didn't solidify that for me, especially. I know that they were maybe trying to go for that, the political hierarchy and not having strong type of villains and stuff like that, especially within the Imperial military. However, if you're gonna rule the galaxy and you don't have any sort of competent villain, it kind of shakes my trust. So when in the end Kylo was, instead of joining with Rey, went against her and tried to take control of the First Order, I was like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted. And then you get the next movie and they completely scrap all of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, the fight scene on the bridge, that's probably the biggest thing that movie contributed.
Wait, what do you mean? Which fight scene with Han Solo and?
No. I'm talking about the fight scene in the Star Destroyer with Kylo and Rey fighting.
He's up when they're in the room.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You meant the bridge of the ship. I thought you meant the, what's it called?
That saved it for you?
No, I didn't say that's what saved it for me. I'm saying that that's probably the most that movie contributed.
Even that's pushing it, bro. Like, I'm watching the choreography with that.
If you go frame by frame with the choreography, yes, it doesn't hold up, but it still is visually impressive and like cool with the contrast of the colors. Like when I first watched it, I was like, that's incredible. But yeah, when you go like frame by frame, it doesn't all hold up. Okay.
It wasn't even frame by frame. And then maybe it's because I'm an animator. I focus on motion and movements and all that. And just the way that these guards were defending and just moving, it just didn't make.
They were dancers.
They were moving to die.
The guards never wanted to be a guard. They wanted to be a dancer, but their moms pushed them to the guard training academy, and this is their chance to rebel. They're like, Snoke's gone. This is my moment.
But yeah, no, it was just. Oh man, this is how bad these movies are for me, man. Honestly, I've blocked out certain sections of them, and they were just a blur to me. Is this the one where they go to the casino too, and it's like all the like PETA stuff? Okay, that's
the casino planet is bad. I can agree with that.
This is the vegan PETA, like what preppy, like I don't know, like new age mentality. Like, oh yeah, we gotta get to all the. I feel like that's what this film was trying to aim at.
I like what the casino planet was representing. That there's like gray areas, there's good and bad on both sides, and like there's just people in the middle profiting by selling weapons to each side. I like that message. Just the casino planet and like the running through the city, that itself, it wasn't like visualized very well, but I like the idea behind it, and like what's his face, that guy, the master code breaker, whatever, like his part in that. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Daniel. Do you have any more thoughts?
That's a solid point. I totally agree. I think that's something that could have been pushed further, but they didn't. You know, they're just like, okay.
I think The Last Jedi does a lot of things right, though. Like, I do respect Rian Johnson for trying something different. And again, I don't know necessarily if everything like The Last Jedi not working is his fault. It's, again, I think it's overall Disney's lack of a plan for this whole trilogy and like arcs, and just kind of giving each director like, do what you want with this movie and then we'll figure it out later. And like that's not how you like plan a character arc. And it's basically what they did for like the first two films. And then by the third film, they were like, oh crap, like we've got nothing. We need to wrap this all up. Like I do respect like that. All right. I know a lot of people hate what they did with Luke's character, and I think that's something important to talk about. That I like the idea behind it, that like if you just remove Luke, like the name Luke Skywalker, I like the idea of like a hero that like after years of things not working out, like you spent your whole life defeating the Empire, then like pretty much everything you did was for nothing because a new Empire power rises, and like just years of things not working out, you lose your hope and like get off the path kind of thing, lose your way. And people were like, it feels like a betrayal of his character. Like, I think this point of the story was like he's finding that hope again, and he comes around by the end, becomes that Luke Skywalker persona that people can believe in again. I think at the beginning, he's at like a really low point. It makes sense how he got there. And then we get to him to build back up to the Luke Skywalker hero persona. But because like he like lost hope at all at one point, everyone's like, oh, this is a betrayal of his character. Like, it's okay and like realistic that some people change and like lose their way a bit, but the fact that he got back is the inspiring part, I think. And
I was about to say, I completely agree. I like what they were trying to do. That kind of, even like the best of us can fall, and we can have like our moments of weakness.
Totally.
I think that they picked an interesting character to do it with, just because of how iconic the name Luke Skywalker is, and just especially because you have a lot of these like older fans when they saw it in the movies back in the 80s, that like they've had this like persona of this character for so long, and then you come out like 30 plus years later and just completely flip the script. I think especially for I could see that being a problem for older generations and that more like wanting stability and consistency, and whereas the younger generation could kind of adapt
Be more
to
forgiving.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, granted, that's not saying that everybody who originally saw it hated it and everybody who saw it knew liked
Right.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think they were. I will give the sequels credit. They did try to do a lot of things to kind of push forward and push boundaries a little bit, but again, like we've mentioned, they just didn't have that foundation to go
A
with, and
plan.
so it was
Yeah.
just they didn't have the consistency to follow through with all of these different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it'd be really cool. Like, I think Rian Johnson is a good filmmaker and has good ideas. I just saw the new Knives Out sequel, Glass Onion, and like he can tell a really compelling story. I think like if they gave him like a Rogue One-esque one-off spin-off and just see what he does with it, like without any characters that people have like attachment to, like just set in the Star Wars world, I think that would be very cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they will. Like they had this trilogy, but I think that got canceled. And so like I think just people have such a sour taste of Rian Johnson with Star Wars in their mouth that I don't know if we'll get that. But I would like to see what he would do with his own story that either Disney has like a full plan or he gets to make a full plan for it. Because I think he's a cool filmmaker.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that'd be something that's cool. Again, the core thing people on saying is there needs to, or there should have been a plan. And there just wasn't. Yeah.
I think all of us are like, I mean, I don't want to speak for all of you. Disagree with me if I'm wrong, but I feel like most of us are just saying, like, three of us are saying we didn't really like the sequel trilogy. Like, I think it was kind of like a letdown as the first thing that Disney kind of did with Star Wars. Like, it was a little disappointing.
I mean, for us too, like our generation was the prequels, right? So
Yeah.
that had a lot of energy, and yeah, there's like different plot points that people didn't like with that and so on. I mean, that happens with each new generation, but what the prequels did right is that it was able to not only set the tone for the original, but it did it in a way that made the Clone Wars actually show like how devastating it was when it like built all the way up to Order 66, right? There was a plan.
Yeah.
With this, there wasn't anything that it was culminating.
Yeah, true. Didn't have to like connect to the anything or like the anything in the future kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump into the Rise of Skywalker then. I always have like such ick feelings with this one because I think this is the first movie that Daniel, you and I did like a movie review on, like on the first new movie that came out, and we were just like so excited to be doing it. We were like, this is great, this feels like Star Wars. And looking back, I'm like, how could I have been so dumb? Like, oh my gosh.
My biggest letdown out of this whole series, if I'm being honest, is what they did to Finn's character, because I feel like Finn, looking back at Force Awakens, had so much potential. He had so much potential, and then they just turned him into a running around and oh, look at that! Oh, look at that guy!
Yeah,
they fly now.
Ray.
Yeah, and even John Boyega knows they have flown before. Like,
Yeah, like, oh my god, seeing that interview of him where he's like, they've had it since the Clone Wars. Like,
is that your John Boyega impression?
Like, dude, I can't do his voice, but like, you know what I mean. Like, like he knows. Like if somebody like him is passionate, like if the fans are passionate and they know, like then why are we not having the right writers to get stuff?
I think
right.
this had a. I think part of the reason, I agree with you, but I think part of the reason for this one was I think they realized, episode 8 was really bad, and we don't have like a vision, so we're cutting there was another script for episode 9, and they like decided to change it. So I think this was just like a super tight turnaround for the schedule to get it out in 2019, like 2 years after Last Jedi. I don't know, Matt, what are your thoughts on this film?
I mean, it also could have just been they're like, we've gotten to this point. There's no upside. Let's just wrap it up and move on.
Yeah, let's just craft something out so it's done.
They're gonna make fun of it and hate it anyway. There's nothing we can do about it. Let's just do the best that we can and call it a day.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Palpatine just being back, Matt?
I mean, it gave me a villain to root against, so there was that.
You got your wish. Matt, you caused this.
That's right. I called up and I just talked to Disney. I was like, hey, can you get a good villain? And then I hung up the phone. I mean, don't get me wrong. There was definitely the fan service of just being like, oh, let's bring back a major character that was beloved. It's not like they added anything like new to his character or anything. They essentially just brought him back. He still wanted to die. Nothing really else.
Yeah. As the sequel trilogy as a whole, which is your guys' favorite of the three?
Of the sequels?
Yeah.
Force Awakens. Because the next two are just complete and utter dog shit.
Matt, what about you?
The other way to put it.
See, I gotta go The Rise of Skywalker. I know that's a hot take.
Rise of Sky. Whoa, really?
I know it's a hot take, but I cannot in good conscience say that I like The Force Awakens the most just because of everything that I've been taught about plagiarism. And I just can't.
But it's plagiarism against yourself.
Yeah,
That's,
plagiarize
you
yourself.
can still do that. That is still a thing that you can get docked for.
That's
Trust me,
so
in the research world, that is a real thing. You
It's not a thing in the
have
art
to-
world, though.
Yeah, again, and so you've got your differences of opinion, but that's why to me it matters more. It's just because it's like this is clear and blatant plagiarism. I've been fighting my whole life to not plagiarize people, and here are people doing it professionally.
Yeah, getting paid. They made $1 billion by plagiarizing. I'm gonna choose.
Man.
I honestly was not expecting that, but I'm choosing The Last Jedi. And like I know
We
everyone's
all
like,
have different films.
yeah. Well, I like again like what I was saying. Ryan Johnson did something different, and I really respected that. And he took a swing, and again, it didn't pay off completely, but I really respected that he took a swing and did something different. And like The Force Awakens is not different.
But I think that's why I probably like it the most because it was safe.
No change.
Yes, but it was no. That's the thing. It was no change. It was no change. And there's still problems with
But
it.
change
and
is where progress happens.
I guess the best way I could say this is that it was okay. That's my best feeling out of all of these ones. Is that at least I had one that was okay.
Yeah.
So
This is
it was
probably a
just
hot
like,
take, but it's probably good the sequel trilogy failed because it laid the groundwork for Disney to be like, okay,
to recover.
we can do wrong. Like they didn't get this false persona of like we can do no wrong and then just like crap out whatever. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, fans aren't just gonna be receptive to anything we put out, so let's like take our time and like actually put some work into things. And then yeah, we got some good things. So let's talk about one of the good things. Rogue One, the first spin-off film.
Yes. Oh my god. This film was so beautifully done. Just the way visually it was constructed and just the way that the story made perfect sense for how it led to them getting the Death Star plans.
Yeah.
It's my favorite Star Wars film. Like overall.
Ever. Wow.
Yeah.
Honestly, Daniel, I would have to agree. It's definitely at
Wow.
least in my top two. Like, I love the movie so much. And this is something when I was just looking through Disney Plus to see all of the stuff that Disney had produced and just kind of looking at it as a whole. I was like, Disney so far hasn't done the best job expanding the Star Wars universe. And when I say expanding, I mean moving past episode 6. What I think Disney has really done is helped enrich that time point in between episode 1 and episode 6.
Yes.
I think that's kind of, with a lot of both the shows and the movies, I think that enrichment is where Disney has shined, and they're just progression of the show into something, or of Star Wars in general, into like, I guess, the next step. I think that's kind of where they've fallen flat. And I think as we've kind of mentioned previously, not having that having the lack of vision to like move on, I think that's what really has shot them in the foot. But when like we've said previously, when they took the step back, listened to what the fans said, they kind of realized some areas that they could really hone in on and like fix and fill some of the holes.
Yeah,
That's
which
a
is
really
kind of funny to
interesting point.
think about. Because it's arguably harder to kind of fill in the holes if you think about it. Because you already have story and points that you have to. I mean, the same thing the prequels were getting into when they're doing it. It's like there's things that need to like loop up, or like when they were doing the Clone Wars, like they couldn't have Anakin meet General
Right.
Grievous because of that one line.
But
you know?
maybe that's where they shine. They shine at like it's kind of like everyone says like creativity thrives when there's like parameters around it. So maybe they have like they're like more so filling in pieces of a puzzle instead of creating a puzzle. Maybe they struggle at like the big creating like a new puzzle, but when they're just like filling in the holes and have these parameters they have to like balance around, they thrive at that. That's a good point. I haven't actually thought about it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting. Are you considering like you said between episodes 1 and 6? Are you considering like Mandalorian and stuff right after episode 6 also in that time frame?
Right. I guess yes. I always forget that the Mandalorian comes slightly after episode 6, and I will say that's probably Disney's best area that they've progressed past episode 6.
Yeah.
But yes, I'd have to include the Mandalorian just because it's like it is going and doing something new, but it's still close enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm interested then to see like about this kind of like hypothesis, like how Disney will handle the Acolyte, because that takes place hundreds of years before in like the High Republic era, and I know they've been fleshing out the High Republic era in other media, like mediums, like books and comics and stuff, but I don't think we've seen anything like on screen for it yet. So I'd be interested to see how they handle that.
Oh, I agree, and I think that'll probably be their next big test to kind of see. Now, I forget, is that supposed to be a movie, TV show?
That's a show.
Okay.
Yeah, I have the synopsis here. I'm scrolling on so much. All right, so it's a mystery thriller that will take viewers into a galaxy of shadowy secrets and emerging dark side powers. In the final days of the High Republic era, a former Padawan reunites with her Jedi Master to investigate a series of crimes, but the forces they confront are more sinister than they ever anticipated. And apparently, I read it in like another interview that like this show will explore how the Sith infiltrated the Jedi ranks, basically.
Interesting. I feel like Andor, with how it's been going with its more like drama thriller-esqueness, like it's I feel like this is gonna be on tangent with that. So maybe Andor was kind of like a feeler out, like, hey, will the Star Wars community like that kind of feel? And if they do, what can we do to bring that over into this? I think that's kind of what they're breaking down with that.
Let's I don't mean to like I kind of want to put a pin in this, just like finish talking about the films and then we can jump into the shows and stuff. Matt, did you have any more thoughts on Rogue One? We kind of like breezed over that.
Right. And I remember I have this conversation with just about anybody who will mention Rogue One, is that I really just loved how they framed the rebellion and the start of it, just like, again, that revolution against this established government. And so they kind of don't do it in a more ethical way. I think that was my biggest hone-in message. And like why I really liked it was like the start of like we're just going to do whatever we want. And then kind of going more into the like sacrifice needed and to like have morals behind the actions, or else they're just going to fall into the same trap.
It's a trap. Yeah. I have a few things I wanted to mention about Rogue One. I think it's cool. They finally start getting away from the Skywalkers and got to see other characters and there was actual stakes because they could die since no one had to connect to continuity. I also want to praise the cinematographer just from a filmmaking standpoint. Greg Fraser is his name, and I talk about this guy all the time, I feel like, on the podcast, but he like his sense of scale, like in this, especially like with the Death Star like being built, like the radar dish going on and just like Star Destroyers, his sense of scale is incredible. He also did the Batman and Dune, so I'm like a huge fan of his, and that was one of his first works I was like brought aware of him. I was thinking about your point, Matt, where you're saying that like they're enriching and filling in the holes of like between episodes 1 and 6. I think that's a good point. I do wonder though if it's like too much, because like we're getting so much content between specifically episodes 3 and 4, and then also like right after episode 6. Like it's a lot, and it is really cool, but like I think we had Rogue One, Solo, Rebels, Obi-Wan, all taking place between episodes 3 and 4, and it's just like a lot. Andor, I don't know if I mentioned that, but it's just like a lot happening in there, and I'm like, I'm kind of getting tired of like, and this is how the rebellion started. Like I feel like we've seen like 10 cases of that, and I'm kind of like, okay, like I get it, guys. Like, and don't get me wrong, it is really cool, and I am loving that we're getting so much Star Wars content, but I want to see like more cool stuff like the Acolyte, like in other time periods. Like I love the Star Wars world and want to see like other stories that they can get me to fall in love with. And the reason they might be doing so much in this time period is because they're using it like as a crutch to like because we love that so much. I'm not sure if that's entirely true. I'd have to think about that more. It's just like an observation I had.
Yeah, something that kind of, when you were talking, I absolutely agree. You definitely will get to the point that if you keep going in these particular timelines, you will have that oversaturation.
Yeah.
And I think I think that's something that Disney in and of itself as a whole is kind of struggling with, just because you have this new Marvel TV show, this new Star Wars TV show, this new Marvel movie or whatever. It's just getting to the point where
it's a lot.
It is becoming very difficult, especially for
Dense.
more common fans to keep up with. Like, I know, at least for me personally, it's much easier to keep up with Star Wars just because I have this love for it and have like a lot more background knowledge. But at least when it comes to Marvel, like, I'm losing it. Like, I'm just kind of all over the place. And I feel like that's something that, kind of like how you mentioned, Disney has to be careful with when it comes to Star Wars as well.
Yeah, I agree.
That's
Like, we do this for the podcast. Like, we watch this for the podcast, and even I'm like, this is a lot. And like, some stuff I'm not watching. Like, I didn't watch I Am Groot, and like, I was the first one. I was like, I like just don't want to watch this, and like, I'm not gonna talk about it on the podcast. So like, why am I gonna watch this? And like, I don't know. I'm worried I'm gonna get to that point where I'm like, well, we're not talking about it on the pod, so maybe I just won't watch it. Like, I almost didn't watch Werewolf by Night, but I'm so glad I did.
Dude,
and that's nothing against Werewolf by
great.
Night. I think it's just that there's so much else with Marvel. I'm like, this is a one-off. Like, I'm just tired of Marvel. Like, maybe I won't watch this one. That sucks because like, it was really good. So I'm glad I went around and watched it, but am I going to miss anything else? Cause I'm just like, this is a lot. I don't know.
Going back to that point, I think it's different in that case, because like, using Werewolf by Night as an example, like, it was something that was different because it was a one-off, because of the energy and the way it was shot and all that. So I think, getting back to the original point, that there needs to be more variation like that moving forward, because if it is just the same thing,
same 6 episodes,
same general stuff
between episodes
over
3 and
again,
4, anything,
it's going to be draining to a point. It's going to be entertaining, but also draining.
Wait, entertaining but draining.
Yeah.
Disney, new next 100 years of Disney. That's their logo, their motto.
I think that, how we mentioned earlier, that Disney didn't do great when it came to the first movies that are released, but it's doing well with TV shows. I'm honestly wondering right now, and again, this is something that just popped into my head, when Disney is going to branch off into into more of the expanded universe to try to continue the story. I'm wondering if they'll start with TV shows, just because there's that expectation of, oh, maybe the first episode might not be that good. It's the starter. We'll keep watching to see where this is going to end up. And you can kind of build it more gradually that way, in more bite-sized pieces, so that it's it'll be somewhat easier to keep up with, compared to making this whole big film budget blockbuster that, if it doesn't work well, you kind of have your, again, sequel dilemma of trying to finish out everything that's been scheduled, just for fans to think it's average at best.
Yeah, and I think that brings up a good point, that like, I think at least right now, that might change in the future. I think fans are more forgiving of bad TV shows because it doesn't hold the same like elevated status as like a trilogy. Like, people were talking about the trilogy being bad all the time, but I feel like Boba Fett came out literally last year, wasn't great in my mind, and people haven't really like complained as much about that. So maybe it's like less stakes as well to just test the waters with TV shows. The last movie I do want to talk about before we do jump into like deep diving into some of these shows is Solo. So we had the high of Rogue One, and now we've got Solo. What do you guys think about Solo?
I think so. Here's the thing: Solo, if you exclude the connection of it's from Star Wars, it's still it's a good film.
Okay.
Like, technically story-wise, but like, at the same time, it's weird because it has that connection to Star Wars, and you're taking characters already known, and there
are definitely good aspects. I'm
not sure if it was something that we needed. And that's something that Jake, I kind of got from you. Like, you say all the time, like, is this story needed? Like, does the audience or does the viewers, they might want to see it, but like,
does it does it give us anything?
Does it engage
more?
The story?
Like,
yeah.
And I think that's something, that they have to walk the line with all of these things that take place that are like filling in the holes. Like, I think this fills in the hole of like what the Kessel Run was and gives Han Solo some credibility to being a pilot. But I think Han Solo already had a ton of credibility being a pilot because of the original trilogy kind of thing. Yeah, Matt, what do you think about Solo?
I mean, I thought it was a decent film. I didn't walk out of it and just be like, I wasted my time or whatever. But
Yeah.
I think I've maybe seen it once or twice. Like,
Yeah, it's
I
not
was
one
like,
I
yeah, it was
rewatch.
okay.
I think I need to give it credit though, just because it is something. Because the production nightmare that it was, just reading about the behind the scenes stuff, is insane. Like Lord and Miller, the two guys that like headed Spider-Verse, were originally tasked with directing Solo, and then they just kept butting heads with Kathleen Kennedy in like the studio, and so they got fired from it. Like 3/4 of the way through production, like after 3/4 was filmed, which is like so expensive, and then they brought on Ron Howard to like reshoot 3/4 of that. So they ended up reshooting like a ton of the movie, and like the budget ballooned to like almost $300 million. So it literally, I believe, became the most expensive Star Wars film ever made. And like with marketing, did not even come close to breaking even. And again, I think there are good aspects to it. Like Donald Glover as Lando, I really liked that. And I think there's like talks about the Lando series. I hope it doesn't get canceled. The one big takeaway that I'm viewing from Solo is it seems like I don't think we've had like any other one-offs since that. And I think I think the executive and studio reaction to Solo is really bad, because like they lost bad here, and I think they saw how like Solo did, and I think they like over course corrected maybe. Like we have received no new spin-off movies since that, or any new movies really since the Rise of Skywalker. And I think it's good that they're kind of taking some time to get their ducks in a row. I think that's actually like fantastic. I just am worried that like they're going to overcourse correct and just like keep pumping out shows, because they're like, well, obviously movies don't work because look at Solo. Like I don't want them to take that lesson away. I don't know.
No, I agree with that. I don't think that they should overcourse correct like that. But that then also brings up a question of, do you think they're going to make like one-off based off of one of the shows? Like, do you think there's going to be like a Mandalorian movie down the road?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know if I feel like they might first test bringing characters from the shows into like a different movie. I don't know if they'll just jump from like, and now we're doing a Mandalorian movie. That would feel weird, I think, like with the show structure right now, at least for Mandalorian. Maybe, I don't know. That's an interesting point.
Technically it's the reverse of what they're doing for Andor. They had the film first, and now they're going back and doing the show. So
I think that's more of like a traditional progression though. Like I feel like it's more rare for like a TV show to jump to a movie. I don't know.
I'd definitely be interested to see how they do it. I don't know how they're going to do it with the Mandalorian, because he's just starring in every single show now.
Yeah.
But I hadn't personally thought of the fact that Solo was the last spinoff, and yeah, I don't really know how I would react to taking characters from the show and then making their own movies out of it.
Yeah. Before we jump into the TV shows, I want to talk about some upcoming projects and some of them that were canceled. So, and just kind of like run through and talk about our thoughts on them. So I think Taika Waititi still has like a Star Wars film that's been rumored that, or like I think confirmed that like he's heading and like writing and directing. I was excited about this, and then Thor 4 came out, and I was a little let down by that. So I'm now like cautiously optimistic. I feel like
it's still going to be good. It's just something that it's a rickety bridge. You got to make sure you take the right steps, you know? So
that's a good analogy. Star Wars is like a rickety bridge, and just like could crumble at any second.
So yeah, that's how I feel. You know, as long as they're taking the right steps, that's all that really matters.
Yeah. There's the Rian Johnson trilogy. Like I said, that was canceled, I believe, because I think he's focusing on. I think the press release was like he's focusing on like Knives Out sequels and his own production company stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just going to run through these quick. The Kevin Feige produced one. I think that one is still officially greenlit as of now, as of recording this on December 3rd. There's the Game of Thrones directors. They had David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. They had, I think, either a film or like a trilogy that has now since been canceled. I think since the Game of Thrones ending was received horribly. Damon Lindelof, I might be mispronouncing, I'm sorry. He's the showrunner of Watchmen. He's currently writing a film that's still on. I'm pretty much going like on canceled. Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron, that was the Wonder Woman director. That has now been canceled. And then Sean Levy, I think this is the most recent one. Sean Levy, he is doing a Star Wars film. He's directing Deadpool 3 as well, though, and I think that's first. So this might be like years down the road if it ever happens.
Yeah.
Any of those jump out at you guys?
Not really, but here's what is jumping out to me out of all this.
they
feel
announce
like
way too many films and then cancel way too many.
well, no, here's the thing. It shows that they're planning.
True. I feel like they get an idea. They're like, this is great. This is a great idea. And then they like announce it like, look, we're going to do this. And they're like, I actually don't feel like it.
Yeah, that's the downside of that. But at the end of the day, it is nice to have some insight and being able to see like, hey, they are at least having some foresight. You know?
True.
There is benefit to that.
All right. Ready to jump into the shows?
Yeah.
TV shows. Well, I think so. The first show that Disney produced was Rebels, I believe, right?
I think so.
Technically, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we all talked. If you guys want to check it out, I'll put a card up here of our Rebels episode. But we talked that one to death. So Lucasfilm was acquired in 2012, and then Rebels aired in 2014. So technically, this was the first Disney thing that Disney Star Wars thing that they did, because Force Awakens was 2015. First, like, yeah, I don't know, media like that. So what do you guys think? Just brief thoughts on the show. We've talked about it before again, but yeah, what do you guys think?
That was great. It was a great show. It was a different energy, but it was good with how it again was able to progress with the characters and have that connection with the characters. I think that's something that Star Wars does well. And this was just another example of that.
I would agree. I think it honestly kind of got forgotten a little bit, at least when it was initially released. And then as time grew on, I think that's when it kind of gained more of its following. And it's like, I guess more status is more of like a prominent Star Wars media content.
Yeah, I think that's kind of rare, which is pretty cool that it like kind of gained following later. All right, then let's jump into The Mandalorian. We talked about that a bit. I love The Mandalorian, dude. And I personally, like, we're going to talk about Andor, and I do think Andor is, like, amazing and fantastic, but I hate that it's, like, overshadowing Mandalorian. Like, people are like, Andor is, like, the best thing Star Wars has ever done. The rest of the Star Wars shows have been, like, trash compared to this. Like, this is Star Wars. And I'm like, bro, like, Mandalorian, don't lump Mandalorian in with that. Like, Mandalorian was fantastic. And it not only was it fantastic, it laid the groundwork so that Andor could even happen, but, like, Mandalorian pretty much launched Disney Plus like to the top of streaming, and also just like established Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni as like this powerhouse team, and like lay the groundwork for this like kind of, I don't want to say golden age, I'll say like smeared golden age of Disney.
A gilded age. It's gilded age.
Yeah, this Disney TV content. And we got Grogu. Like, that's huge bonus points.
Yeah.
So Baby Yoda came from that.
I will admit, when The Mandalorian was first announced, I was so hesitant on it. I was genuinely afraid to watch it. I did not initially watch it when it was first released. But after watching it, I loved it. I really think that it was a great Star Wars show, and it kind of just built, like you said, it kind of really set the framework for a lot of their other successful projects.
Yeah. I mean, season 2 I thought was just as good as season 1. As my opinion, and I'm excited for season 3 coming out in like a month or two, like 2 months, something like that. I think
you mean season 3.5, considering half of Book of Boba Fett was.
Oh yeah,
was more of him.
Yeah.
Which I'm not complaining about, but I am going to complain about for Book of Boba Fett. Like, I can always use more.
We'll get to Book of Boba Fett then. Next on my list, I've got Clone Wars season 7. Matt, I know you're a Clone Wars fan, so what do you got to say about this?
I absolutely love Clone Wars season 7. I mean, the sisters arc, we could get rid of that.
Dang it. I was going to be like, even the sisters, but you caveated that really quick.
I was like, before I get absolutely slaughtered, I need to just be like, hang on, no, trust me, I need to establish my credibility. But I loved how they went to the Siege of Mandalore. I think I had been wanting to see that for so long, and just the fact that it came true, and just the cinematography, like, I'm normally not a person who could really even recognize that because I don't see those types of things, but I thought it was just beautifully shot. The story was absolutely amazing. I mean, am I biased because I'm a huge Clone Wars fan? Absolutely. But it's still amazing content.
But I think that takes credit because you're such a huge Clone Wars fan. The fact that this elevated your idea and perception of it, like, shows they did it right. Like, it could have been bad, but they took it and did it well. I think it's just interesting, like, the give and take of, like, if Clone Wars season 7 had not come out and we brought up Clone Wars, we'd be upset because I think, like, Disney canceled Clone Wars, like right when they purchased it, and like season 7 like never got made. But the fact that they were able to bring it back all these years later and like do it right with like the improved like visual technical technology, whatever I'm saying. I think that's really cool that we can now look back and be like, okay, it took a while, but like in the end, it was worth it, and we got there, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like it's always gonna be a weird process whenever there's a merger like that, and you end a production because fans are always gonna be pissed about that.
Yeah,
I mean, the same thing happened with Spectacular Spider-Man when Marvel was transitioning, right? But at the same time, it's great when you're able to have the realization of the potential of what that could have been, what it's led to, and then the realization of it. And I feel like season 7 is like literally like the perfect example of that. Minus again the sisters, but
yeah, and that kind of leads me into Bad Batch. I think it was funny because I remember when they were about to announce Bad Batch, they were like, there was like a rumor, or like I think they said like, we're not officially going to release what the show is centered around, but it's around one of the arcs of season 7 of Clone Wars. And I was like, okay, so there's Bad Batch, the Martez sisters, or like the Ahsoka Mandalore Order 66 arc. And I was like, well, the Order 66 arc just leads into the rest of the Star Wars movies, so it cannot be that. So it's between Bad Batch and the Martez sisters. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it's Bad Batch, but if they do a spin-off show on the Martez sisters, I'm going to like lose all faith in humanity. So luckily it was Bad Batch. But what do you guys think about Bad Batch?
I think it was good. I don't know. It had a weird energy to me. Like I feel like there's like a lot of potential there that I like walked into it with. I was like, oh yeah, I'm excited for it. But as like the season progressed, I don't know. I kind of lost some interest and intrigue with it.
I'd have to agree. I think I was definitely excited for it, and I remember because I watched at least part of it with Jake.
Yeah,
and we sat down and we're like, oh, it'll be the first episode. It'll be 20 minutes. Yeah, we'll see what they do. And then we're like, it's an hour long.
It was an hour long. We were like, this is awesome. I think I had to go somewhere, and I was like, I did not want to leave.
And just like watching it, because the first episode, like, yeah, it was an hour long, but it was an hour long full of just amazing content and different arcs and like turns and stuff like that. But I'd agree, as like, and I was just like seeing that episode, I was just like, where are they going to go from here? Like, how are they going to keep this hype up? And I really don't think that they kept it up to that level. I think that they definitely got some back with the callbacks. So like when you saw Rex again, when you had the Chip like episode and stuff like that, I think that's the same episode. But I do think that it lost some hype. So I'm very interested in to see how season 2 of that is going to go.
Yeah. I agree. I think, maybe a little bit towards the middle, it got a little repetitive. Like they go on like some mission for like that boss, whatever alien that was, and it's like their little side quest. But I think the overall story, like they're on the run because they're these defective clones, I think that's pretty interesting and kind of cool, and like the family dynamic they're doing. I was slightly worried because I feel like Bad Batch 2 season 2, they announced it like a while ago, and then it's been delayed like 2 or 3 times, I feel like. And so that kind of shows me that they've been focusing on other things and they've just been kicking the can. So I hope that when it finally does come out, it's not because like this deadline came around. It's because they like put the time and care into it. So the fact that they are delaying it shows me that they want to put the care and attention to it. So I hope they do that.
When's the new release date for that again?
It's soon. I think it's like January of like in a month, basically. I think it's like a month from like today, January 4th, 2023. So a month basically from today, from tomorrow, from yesterday, depending on when you're listening to this.
It may be out when you're listening to this for the first time.
It's out now. All right. What do you guys think about Visions? It's kind of like a one-off. What do you think, Matt, of Star Wars Visions?
I liked it. I found it to be like a unique way to kind of transition, especially trying to capture some Asian culture in there as well.
Yeah.
Just like as a big Star Wars fan, I was like, oh, okay, this does seem pretty good. I like that they're trying to be more inclusive. But to me personally, it never got to that level where it's like, oh, I need to see this, like rewatch it kind of thing. So like I saw it, thought it was good, but I don't have like a great memory or grasp on it.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to put it. Like, I think artistically it was amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
It was great seeing how not only it was like it wasn't just one studio. It's like all these different studios are able to have their own takes, have their own arcs that they're able to build up for their own episode, which was really cool to see how they wanted to perceive the Star Wars universe, because that's really what they had the option to have. They were like, hey, how could we have this be? And I really love that, just that creative building, that whole process. But again, with that said, I agree with Matt to where it's like, okay, we get this glimpse in. And I might, if there's more content, which I'm pretty sure there is, isn't there? Like, aren't they going to be following up some arcs?
I think they're doing a season 2, maybe. They also just released that Grogu short which was like a collab with Studio Ghibli, whatever the heck it is. So yeah, there is a season 2 of Visions. So maybe there will be another collab with that Studio Ghibli in the future. I don't know.
But yeah, so in other words, I'm excited for that and like to watch that, obviously. But like, I wouldn't probably rewatch Visions. Like it's I've seen it. I thought it was amazing, but I don't necessarily like have that urge to go back and consume it again.
Yeah. All right. Boba Fett. This is the weakest show in my opinion.
I think it should have been a movie, and I think it should have not been this flip-flop, paddywhack, give a dog a bone between him and the Back to Tank and current day.
That was some of my favorite stuff, though. I think it should have been a movie, or just like the story of him like learning the culture of the Tusken Raiders. I loved that stuff. I did not like the like mob boss, like I'm gonna be good and whatever.
Well, it's because there's no motive. Like there should have been a motive. Like that's the problem with the modern time stuff, was that there was he was doing all these actions and we never had a motive connected with him, and that was a big thing. And we didn't learn that till the end of the whole like flashback arc, towards like, okay, now he has this connection with the Raiders, and he's doing this because he wants to be able to lead and do his own thing. And you didn't get that as he's like, oh yeah, right, like a bantha, you know, like.
Yep, that's your Boba Fett impression.
If it was all the flashback stuff together from the beginning, and then halfway through you get the realization like, oh, these are all just memories, and then like him coming out of the Back to Tank, and then it goes into him doing all the mob boss stuff. I feel like that would have been better.
I don't even know if that would have saved it. I think if we just focus on the Tusken flashback stuff, like I loved him learning about like that culture and becoming one of like the tribe and then fighting the invaders. I think that was just like the best part. And like, I don't know, I feel like,
also him fighting the champ.
Yeah. I feel like Back to the Tank has been like a pioneering force of our podcast. It keeps us on track. Maybe Book of Boba Fett should have also looked at the Back to Tank as their pioneering force, but they didn't. So
I also just think the timing of it wasn't great, just because you have the success of The Mandalorian and then you have the success of the second season. There are obviously two people who walk around in Mandalorian armor, to put it very simplistically.
Yeah.
For people who are, especially the casual fans, they're going to be like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
And honestly, like I said at the beginning, like I was like, I think Boba Fett would need to go into now granted, I didn't have this understanding of what they were going to do with the whole Tusken arc and everything, but I was just like, when my expectation of the show was, you need to double down on kind of that more darker side, especially if you were going to be a mob boss on a freaking planet. Can we get away from Tatooine, like please? Like, can we get a new planet that like we just do everything on now?
Please.
Because I'm tired of I'm turning into Anakin Skywalker. I don't like sand anymore.
Yeah. That is a problem with Star Wars.
Yeah,
I think that they released it too close, and then the fact that they had to they brought the Mandalorian in, and that's kind of what carried the show into like at least a somewhat decent standard. Because I think if the Mandalorian wasn't in it, I think we'd have even worse perspectives on just the show in general.
Yep. All right. Yeah, Boba Fett. Yeah. All right, Kenobi.
I think a big part of that. Well, just one last note is that they had the character. Like, we already had him established from the original trilogy as a bounty hunter and all that, so it's tough to take a character who's already established like that and then have him go through a change at the same time again without really understanding why that change is happening.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right.
So, I would also argue, at least to that,
you're good.
Point, yes, he was established, but also at the same time, he wasn't. I mean, he didn't have that much of an impact
background or anything. Yeah.
the original trilogy just because like he's in it for a very brief time point, but he had that, that kind of really macho and cool looking vibe.
That je ne sais
And
quoi.
so
Yes, when I think Boba Fett, I think je ne sais quoi.
but then they kind of completely transition away from that. I'd argue they kind of like, yes, he gets like new armor and stuff like that, but he's not that same level of hype that I think people had associated him with. And I think that kind of just didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, Kenobi.
Obi-Wan.
One more thought.
What do you guys think about Kenobi?
I thought Kenobi was great. Okay, here's the thing. Shot for shot wise, I think Mando was better. Again, because it was something new, it was something different. But when it came to Kenobi, I feel like Kenobi had a really good arc of explaining the difference between like how Kenobi changed from, being this old failure of how he saw himself to getting into that more, lackadaisical old man we see at the beginning of A New Hope.
Yeah.
I don't know, Matt. What do you think?
I mean, I thought the show was good. I think they definitely began that transition well. I was a huge person who was originally against the show. I said at the beginning, I was like, this should be a book because all this is going to be is internal monologue with him trying to figure out how to essentially close that transition between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ben Kenobi. I think the show is doing it well, but it's something also that I'm kind of like, yes, I thought it was a good show, but I don't know if I personally go back and rewatch it several times.
Yeah. I think nostalgia carried it heavy for me. Like if this was just any other story, I would have been like, that was like okay. Like I don't think anything was like horribly bad. I wasn't a huge fan of Reva's arc. Like again, it's kind of like, did we need to know that there was this Inquisitor that infiltrated the ranks? Like what did it really add to the story? Maybe they'll do more with her character later. I'm not sure. I thought there were cool moments, and again, it was really cool seeing Ewan McGregor. He was at this like right age to do it, and it was cool to see that transition. Like we've talked about this again before, all three of us on the podcast. But yeah, I don't know. I'm okay just kind of breezing over this because we've talked about it a bit.
Yeah.
All right, last two. Tales of the Jedi is one that just came out. I love Tales of the Jedi, dude. I cannot speak highly enough of the Clone Wars animation style, and then paired with like again those puzzle pieces fitting with the prequels. And this, I feel like Obi-Wan was a case of like, did we really need to see that? It could have been like a book, whatever. Like you said, Matt, a monologue. But this, like, I feel like added a lot to Qui-Gon's death and Count Dooku's transition.
Yeah, it filled in like the vital gaps.
Yeah,
that, like we could kind of like infer, but we didn't really have the chance to see before. So it was nice being able to actually get that kind of validation in such a cool artistic way, and actually some good arcs in each of the points.
Yeah. Shout out to Kevin Kiner's score. Phenomenal. And my last note, I just hope we get a Tales of the Sith or Tales of the Jedi Season 2. All right, what do you guys think?
I loved the Tales of the Jedi. I loved all of the things that it filled in. I don't know if I'd want a Season 2, in all honesty.
Really?
Like,
okay.
I liked it, and I thought that it filled in the holes that it needed to fill in.
But there's nothing else for it to do?
I don't know if there really is. Like,
okay, that's because I totally
you don't want to fill in the gaps in the sequels, man. Like, come on.
But I think they kind of tapped into one of the major things that they still need, like that, as you mentioned, the Qui-Gon Dooku transition kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think that was a big gap that was left from Episode 1 to Episode 2, especially since Dooku becomes such a prominent villain in Episode 2 and Episode 3.
Right.
At the end, like when they had the Ahsoka thing and they kind of had her like in hiding and then fighting that acolyte or whatever it was, like I was kind of like, okay, this is her transition into like how she got into the Rebels. But I was just like, other than that,
that didn't really
I didn't
change
think that
too much.
Added that much, kind of like we've been talking. And I think if it goes into a second season, it will go into the risk of oversaturation and just filling in gaps that really don't need to be filled.
That's fair. Yeah. Let's jump into Andor. What people are claiming is the best Star Wars thing ever. Well, did you guys like Andor?
I loved it. I loved it so much. There are points where the pacing... I mean, here's the thing. It was just in general a different pacing than the standard Star Wars stuff.
I think that was intentional, though. So if you're going to be like, pacing was slow, I don't care. Like, agree that it was slow, but it was good slow. Like I don't.
But
think,
no,
I think that's often
even,
viewed as like a criticism, and I don't think it necessarily should be in this case.
I know, I like that. I like that it was slow.
Yeah.
When I'm saying pacing now, I'm talking about it being internally for when it comes to the combination of some of the different stories or arcs that were happening. Like when we were jumping between, say, like what was happening with Andor's mom. And I get it now, like now that the finale came out and she had her big speech.
Yeah.
There are moments like, or I feel like we're sticking with her a little bit. And like, it wasn't making sense to me story-wise. I'm like, why are we sticking with her now that Andor's off doing his own thing? Would that be he's in jail or doing something else? But then it started to make more sense as everything started coming back.
So sorry. Speaking of the speech at the end, apparently Cassian's mom, instead of saying "fight the Empire," was supposed to say "F the Empire," but Disney would not allow it.
Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, they can keep their PG-13 rating. There's their one.
Yeah. What do you think of Andor, Matt?
I loved Andor. I thought it was really good. And I think part of the reason that I think it's getting so much praise is because Andor is made for an older audience. I think a lot of the other Disney works were meant to be digestible for younger audiences, but also still appeal to the older audiences. And I feel that Andor is more kind of for the older audience. Like they go into some more darker details and stuff like that. They go into some
like
more
the politics
like,
with Mon Mothma.
Right. And like the moral philosophical issues.
Mon Mothra?
I know, I did that as a joke that time.
It didn't sound like you said it as a joke. It sounded like you were like confused and then you're like, Mothra. So
No,
all I saw was like her face
I was thinking,
with like the Mothra
I was
eyes.
thinking, what's the correct... The reason I slowed down, I was thinking, what's the correct way so I can say it the wrong way as the joke. So that's why it sounded stuttering.
What would Mon Mothra look like? I feel like that'd be so funny if that was like lore and like Coruscant's like you just between like the giant like cement skyscrapers, you just get like a giant moth character that's just like flying between doing like political stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yes, we need to tax the rich.
I think I'm hoping that Star Wars like and Disney takes a lesson away from this. Like I think Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni both really are like good leaders for their shows, and I think they've been maybe stretched a little too thin. I think this is Tony something Gilroy or something. Tony Gilroy, that's his name. He, I think, also is like a good showrunner for this, and like fought back, or like didn't fight back, but like fought for what he wanted in the show. I heard from behind the scenes. I think if you just have more people that are like passionate about the storytelling like this, it'll be good. So I think just finding more people like that, since they are making so much content. This felt different again. I think also maybe hopefully Disney will take that lesson you said, Matt. Like they will realize they don't have to appeal to everyone. Like maybe they will make certain shows for an adult audience and cater certain shows towards children audiences, and that's totally fine. So maybe they'll take that lesson from this. Hopefully, I like that this one didn't have so many forced cameos of like, oh, there's a lightsaber now. Like we're in Star Wars. Remember that. I don't know.
I was about to say, because thinking back, I think the only characters in the show that were at least seen somewhere else were Mon Mothma and Saul Guerrero.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Andor.
Oh yeah.
Rogue
One.
Okay.
So yeah, he's a minor character.
Yeah.
Not really important. But yeah, I think that's just hopefully, like you said, Disney's lesson of being like, hey, we can go into doing some more different, unique things, and just again try to encourage them.
Well, let me ask you guys this: what did you think of Andy Serkis as?
Oh, dude, he was great in my mind.
Dude, I loved his character.
Yeah, I watched a video where he broke down his character arc, and just like he is so passionate about it and like has a deep understanding of like just his character, which like I know the actors have that, but like he just like seemed very passionate and like collaborative with the filmmakers with like making a good character arc. Like he was saying, I wrote some of it down, he was like, once he realizes like in the prison that they're never going to escape, his like humanity like snaps back into him, and like his journey and arc of realizing that if they all come together they can escape, and him filling that leadership role, like that's his arc, even though he has to come to terms with not being able to escape himself. Like it was just so awesome.
I couldn't have been better said.
Yeah, that was a heartbreaking scene.
Yeah.
All right, well, out of all the Star Wars shows that's come out so far, what's been your guys' favorite? All the Disney Star Wars shows.
I am stuck between Mando and Andor. Mandalorian.
Yeah. Mandalorian. Dude, imagine he takes off the helmet and it's Andor underneath. Somehow survive the Death Star blast.
It's Beskar, you know? It can...
Well, yeah.
Yeah, you
help,
see
like, I
just
guess.
they're in the hug right on the beach. Then he's like, "Oh yeah," uncovers his armor from the
Yeah.
sand, puts it on real
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah. Matt, what's your favorite show? Disney Star Wars show?
I was about to. I mean, I got to go Clone Wars season 7.
I knew
Like
you were gonna
that's.
say that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my favorite by far. But I definitely. I'd have to say, like, of like non-animated shows, I would agree with Daniel that Mando and Andalorian,
Mandalorian.
and, the Mandalorian and Andor are definitely top 2.
I think Mandalorian's my top one. I really like that show. And Jon Favreau, again, I've got a soft spot in my heart. All right.
Well, let me ask this. Then what about the anime? I feel like we should also
All right, out of the
define animated
ones. I mean, Clone Wars
Yeah.
season 7.
Yeah. It's hard to beat, dude.
But then after that is Tales of the Jedi for me. I really did like the Dooku stuff, and that just was so good in my mind.
That's a tough balance because, like,
But
again, we still have
Rebels was
Rebels in
good.
there.
Yeah, true.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you have to kind of balance out. Like, would you rather have Rebels or would you rather have Tales of the Jedi?
Oh,
and
that's
I might honestly
true.
be on the edge
Ooh.
of being like, well, I feel like Rebels would be a good. If I had to choose, I'd probably say Rebels because Rebels is then something new, something different. Where Tales of the Jedi was something
That
that's
is true.
beautifully shot, but again, kind of just fills in those gaps.
Yeah, I think I might you might have swayed me. Like Rebels, you got Thrawn in there, and I really like that character. So I don't know. So I just want to quickly mention the upcoming announced shows that are happening. So we said The Acolyte. We have Ahsoka, which takes place after Mando season 2, and the synopsis is she's searching across the galaxy for Thrawn. Speaking of Thrawn, Mando season 3 is February of this year, which actually will overlap with Bad Batch season 2. A little bit with those releases, so that's interesting. So we also have Bad Batch season 2, Rangers of the New Republic that was canceled because that lead actress had like some controversy, and then Skeleton Crew. I actually finally got some information on this. I'm not sure how much we talked about it, but so that's the John Watts project, where it's taking place the same time frame as The Mandalorian and is interconnected. So it's in the same time period as those shows. So again, right after episode 6. And it's like a coming of age story starring Jude Law. They actually just, I think, wrapped up filming around like September-ish. And Jon Favreau himself, I saw an interview, he's very excited about this project. It's like a younger kind of crew, like group of actors that are kind of coming up. So Jon Favreau, he heard John Watts' vision. They were just talking on the set of No Way Home when they were filming that, because obviously he's Happy Hogan. And he was just like genuinely very excited about John Watts' ideas about these new characters and how he could incorporate them into The Mandalorian and beyond, like kind of like adding to the sandbox of Star Wars they've built. So, I don't know, it sounds exciting.
Just take a second, though, to imagine that perspective of being able to work on one of the largest IPs ever with, like, Spider-Man, and you're just talking with one of your creative buddies, because you're both also working on Star Wars shit.
Yeah.
Like...
That's cool. That is really cool.
That's an amazing just place to be at. That's so cool.
Yeah, just imagine being at the lunch table next to them, just, like, eating, like, hearing... I can't believe I'm hearing this. Out of all these, which are you guys most excited for upcoming?
Honestly, I'm probably going to say Mando. That's leading up to something, so I just want to see where that's going to go,
Yeah.
you know? I feel like it's going to be some big...
That's tough. Because, like, there's part of me that, like, definitely wants to see them at least start to go into that old Republic time area.
Acolyte is my number one.
But I also, because I've at least seen some concepts art, but I don't know if it's true or if they're going to go in that direction. But just like for Ahsoka going in, like finding Thrawn and finding Ezra and kind of going off of that, because I mean, Rebels essentially left on that. Oh, this is going to be continued. That could,
that's true.
That could also be pretty interesting.
I think Acolyte's my number one, though. I'm excited about that cast and the idea behind it. And again, getting out of the 6-episode time frame finally. All right, so I do want to talk about video games as well, because I feel like it's important. Disney has done a lot with Star Wars video games. I know it's going to be a little bit of a longer episode. So the first most important thing is Star Wars 1313. So that game was in development before the acquisition, and then Disney canceled it.
I'm surprised you knew about that.
Dude, I've done my research for this episode. I have 15 pages of notes for this episode. Maybe I should have been doing work, but you know, Star Wars. No, I'm kidding. I didn't. If anyone's watching, I was doing work. Yeah, so apparently the synopsis was it was a video game that was like an Uncharted style game set in the underworld of Coruscant, starring a Boba Fett type character, or I think it was actually starring Boba Fett.
It's supposed
maybe.
to be him, and then there's on and off about like, who was going to be.
And they canceled it. Star Wars canceled it. Apparently, rumors around the time the rumor was because the mobile gaming. Disney thought mobile gaming was like the way of the futures and consoles were on their way out. I don't know how true that is. Maybe just some salty fans who reported that. Obviously, it's not true. But yeah, I think it's also really interesting. Again, I'm just kind of trying to set up some groundwork. In 2013, so right after the acquisition in late 2012, like early 2013, Disney pretty much abolished like LucasArts, all but abolished. Like it still, I think, technically was around. Like they changed it to like Lucasfilm Games or something recently, but like LucasArts was like the studio that made all of the
like Lego Star Wars games.
No, that was they worked with TC Games for that, but LucasArts was like the company that did like all of the video games, like the Force Unleashed. I think they did like like Knights of the Old Republic, like all like the Star Wars games. Yeah, the original Battlefront and stuff. But they did like a lot of games. They did like Indiana Jones games as well. A lot of stuff like in the 80s and 90s. Disney wanted to shift their perspective. Instead of doing all their games in-house, they're going to start outsourcing to work with other studios as like partners. And so they partnered, I think, first with EA Games for like their larger AAA games. What are your thoughts on like just that decision to abolish LucasArts? Do you think that was a good call, a bad call?
Okay, as a creative in this field, I think it was honestly a good call. And the reason I'm saying this is because it allows them to still have a focus or have input for when it comes to the story and how those story elements are playing in. But at the same time, allows people who already have the expertise for gameplay and game experience to really shine and have this portal to now access this great IP, right?
Are you saying though that LucasArts had been around since like the 80s? You're saying they didn't have the experience to do these games?
No, I'm saying they did have the experience, but it's also good to change things up in the sense of, as creatives, you tend to do things a certain way. I mean, it's even with Star Wars, like the higher ups, they're trying to do things a certain way. George Lucas had his way of writing and storytelling, and then that changed when we went over to Disney, as we've been talking this entire episode. So when it comes to the game design, I feel like it's important to also have that, so that way things aren't getting stale.
Yeah.
It gave new life to Star Wars Battlefront games. DICE, who already had great experience with other first-person shooters, and they're able to take their experience and then bring that light into Star Wars.
I don't know if I totally agree with Battlefront being like the perfect combination of everything, like the new Battlefront, which I do want to get there. But I just want to say, I think for the decision to like abolish LucasArts, I think it's kind of unfortunate for the people like working there. Like they obviously made some great games, and I imagine just like on one Monday they're like, all right, we're shutting down. Like that sucks. Like that really sucks. And like they did make some great games like Force Unleashed, the original Battlefronts, Knights of the Old Republic, like I said. But from a business perspective, I did some more digging, and I think it 100% makes sense because apparently like LucasArts was really directionless for the last few years before they were like shut down. Besides like the few games that I mentioned, like the Force Unleashed, all that stuff, there just like weren't many memorable games that did well, even though they were making like a lot of games. And I think they were kind of like, even with the research I've done about the Force Unleashed, even when that was being made like that, they were kind of like on their own, like in a different studio than George Lucas and stuff. So like I feel like that would be like they were just kind of on their own, and it makes sense that Disney would want to like have more of a control in what's happening instead of this random group of people that maybe don't, like you said, Daniel, like they could get people that know what they're doing more, I guess.
Yeah, it's what they know more. When I made the comment about it being the perfect combination, I meant for like what the project's goals were. That's really what it comes down to, is like you have this objective, you're trying to figure out what game feel you want, and you want to be able to get the right people that know how to get that kind of feel. At the same time, too, there's also other story-driven ones that are great, like with Respawn. Like, Respawn did a great job with Fallen Order. I love Fallen Order so much. Matt, have you had a chance to play that?
Oh, yeah, I love Fallen Order. That was a great game.
Yeah, so let's start talking about like all these different games that they have now finally outsourced. So we talk about Fallen Order and then Battlefront and Battlefront 2. Those are kind of the big ones. Matt, what are your thoughts on just those three games?
I definitely think that there's been huge controversy when it comes to the new Star Wars games that were published. Like the first Battlefront that was released, because that was the one that came first out of those three, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yep.
I thought it was definitely good, but I think especially when you go for such a beloved franchise as the Battlefront franchise was, just with the major success and popularity of Star Wars Battlefront 2, which is still like the original, which is still my favorite game of all time.
Yeah.
I think that
Wow.
the first Star Wars Battlefront, it fell flat and it lost like a lot of what Star Wars Battlefront was, and it kind of became more of, since like, it was EA and stuff like that, like it became more of Battlefield, essentially. Like it became Battlefield with Star Wars skins a little bit.
Okay.
I think Battlefront 2 definitely it started to go back a little bit to what that originally was, but then you had that whole microtransactions
was just shot it in the foot hard.
Yeah.
Which really sucked, because the game was good and the game was fun, and it brought like a whole new, it brought everything different. And I mean, I still think there need to be more guns in Battlefront 2. I'm sorry, there's like 4 per class or something like that. It's pretty garbage. But again, it kind of brought back some of that Battlefront thing. It's just they shot themselves in the foot with the microtransactions. Like if they did that for cosmetics, they would have been totally fine. They went too far. The fact that it actually affected the gameplay and it became an actual pay to win on a console, like if it was a pay to win on the mobile game and they have like their Galaxy of Heroes game, and that's something that I played for a while. Like I was playing that game, and I think it's their only like actual like successful game on the App Store, just because it is making money with the microtransactions. That shouldn't be in a console game that you've already paid $60 for.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But that's I focus more on the campaign. I feel like the campaign a lot, and especially in Battlefront 2, was extraordinary, because one, you don't have to deal with microtransactions. Two, just the way that the storytelling was done as well, I felt like was great. And then you again had like that Battlefront feel to it. So yeah, like it wasn't like the old OG ones. I can agree with that, but it did have a good feel. Just in general, the user experience was a good feeling. I feel like that's what matters more to me. Like, yeah, the gameplay was fun for multiplayer and all that, but for us talking about like the movies and the games and everything and the shows, I'm caring more about the campaigns and like the stories. I always find myself falling more in love with those aspects of the game.
That's fair. I think we just have to keep that in mind moving forward, because I think I more look at the gameplay, and like usually I focus on multiplayer experiences. So that's just something to like keep in mind as we go forward. That being said, I did focus on the story for Jedi Fallen Order because
there was no multiplayer.
Yeah. I think it's done extremely well. It's a good game. Jedi Survivor, the sequel, is scheduled for like a 2023 release as of now, so that's exciting.
I'm hyped for that.
We've also got Star Wars Squadrons, which I played for the first time.
Jake hates it.
I didn't hate it. It was a lot.
You need to play the campaign. Play the campaign. Actually,
I don't like the campaign. We've established that.
I love Squadrons. Matt, have you played Squadrons?
I've played some. I can't remember if I played it on my brother's VR headset or if I just played it with like I think I did more of like the console. I don't think I really got to the headset. But I'm also just not the best pilot and understanding the mechanics. So there's that.
That's like, man, I don't know what it is, but I'm like an ace, I don't know if it's because I do like 3D modeling, so I get 3D space. Like,
also, how many hours have you logged into that game?
That's a good question. Hold on. It's only 35 and a half hours.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
But like a little over a day. But at the end of the day, at the end of
that one day that I spent in a headset.
I just love the flying mechanics. It's great.
Yeah, they did a good job, I feel like, fleshing that out. Yeah. Speaking of VR, we've also got Vader Immortal, which was that like VR.
I still haven't had the chance to play that.
I actually did get to play this. My roommate had a friend over that had a VR headset, and I just like was walking in the kitchen one day, like, "Hey, you want to try this?" I was like, "Oh, sure." And I was just like, it was pretty fun, and I actually picked it up pretty fast, but it was fun. Like it was just you to like swing a lightsaber around and deflect things. It is like a lot of like the training simulation stuff I did. So I think maybe if there was more to that, I don't know how much more there is, but I think that has potential because like kids want to be like
beat shit up
a Jedi, and then finally the last thing I have on this list is that has come out, and then we can get the announced games, but we have Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga that has technically come out.
I thought you were going to talk about Tales of Galaxy's Edge, or From Galaxy's Edge.
What?
That's
another Star Wars VR game.
Yeah.
Where? Oh, I did not know about that. Sorry. But Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, what do you guys think of this one?
I played a little bit of it, but like I don't know. I just can't get into it. It doesn't have the same feel.
You're not a kid anymore, pretty much.
Like I could go back and play like the OG ones, and like it has its feel, right? This one, I feel like there's too much stuff going on.
I don't know that. What do you mean by that?
I don't know. It's all the different classes and like I get. It's nice to have different customization and all this, stuff. But like,
I like
it's
that.
a lot for me to try to bounce and absorb. And I'm at a point now also to where like I don't want to be like the Uber collector collecting everything, which is what I feel like
I have become
this
that,
is.
and it's so annoying. Like I remember when I was a kid and I would play with my dad, I would always just want to run through the level and get through the story and just like beat up the bad guys as fast as possible. And my dad was like, wait, and would stay and like hit every single plant to get all the coins so we can get true Jedi. I'm like, I don't care about true Jedi. I just want to go. And now I've flipped and I'm like getting everything, every secret. I'm like, if I don't get true Jedi by halfway through the level, I'm a failure. Matt, what do you think about this Last Skywalker saga?
I do think that there are some good and bad points, and I do think that there's kind of like I'm in the mix or in the middle between your two guys' opinions. I think that the story campaign missions, I was very interested to see what they were going to do with that, just because we had already had those with both Lego Star Wars 2, and then the complete saga. Like, we had seen those levels several times. But I do think that they kind of seemed rushed in the Skywalker saga. Like, you go through them relatively quickly.
Yeah, I
just
see
because
that.
you have, and I mean, part of it is because you have to go through 9 movies, so it's understandable.
Yeah.
And I think that it's great when you can explore the open world with somebody else, and then you can do all of the fun things and stuff like that. Because I mean, that's how originally the game was meant to be played. It was meant to be played co-op, or at least from my perspective, I always played it co-op with my brother.
Yeah.
I will admit, I do think that like the open world is great, and like you can explore and do all of these cool things. But Daniel, I also do agree with your point that it's like there is a bit too much, and it's just like every planet's got its own thing, and then some of the missions, it's like you got to go to 5 different planets to do this one thing, and I'm just like, I don't want to do that. I just want to explore this planet, kind of thing. I think there needs to be a bit more of the balance between the missions and the open world.
Okay,
I totally agree with that. You also brought up 2 points that I feel like are very important that they fumbled on game experience, which is one, the multiplayer online is terrible. Like, I wanted to do co-op with Jake.
Oh yeah.
But like it was so janky. Like, you're gonna have co-op already as a feature and a core thing, and then you fail to get it set up right, which is just
for online
sad
multiplayer,
for me to see as for like a Lego game. And then 2, the way that they did the specific story mission for the Obi-Wan Anakin fight.
Oh yeah, you can't fight each other.
Oh.
Yeah. You're C-3PO.
Yeah, and then there's a freaking part in the middle where you're like, oh yeah, now we're the droids like floating on these other things that are tangential.
Wasn't C-3PO not even there?
Fight.
Like in the was
he
he
was
there in the movie?
I think he was in the ship.
Oh.
Like he was in Padme's fight.
Yeah. Okay.
And then R2 was not there either. I think he was also up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways.
He stayed with the ship. So I'm just like, bruh.
I don't mean to like keep
on?
going, but we've been almost recording for 2 hours, so I just want to keep going because I got to edit this before Monday.
Yeah.
But so I just want to quickly mention that in January of last year, January 2021, the EA exclusivity deal ended, so now other studios can legally make Star Wars video games, and a few were announced. With what happened with the microtransactions with Battlefront, I would be surprised if Star Wars did ever do another exclusivity deal like that again. But the current games in development are Ubisoft. They're doing they're the studio that did Assassin's Creed. They're working on an untitled Star Wars game right now, and then
that's gonna be dope though.
Quantic Dream. They are the studio that does narrative-focused games like Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human. They are doing a game called Star Wars Eclipse, and that's set in the High Republic era. And the trailer looks really sick. I watched it. But what are your guys' like favorite video game out of the Disney Star Wars ones? And then we'll jump into books and comics briefly before wrapping up.
I am going to say, and this is largely because of the campaign. I love the campaign in this game. Is Star Wars Battlefront 2 actually? Because for me, it was bringing back the feel of Star Wars Battlefront. But the campaign with Operation Cinder and seeing like what other evil things the Empire was doing, I think added a lot more to just the power and what makes you like hate the Empire in the first place. I felt like it added a lot to that, which was nice.
What about you, Matt?
I'd also like to say Star Wars Battlefront 2, but that's just because I like to own kids in multiplayer. So.
Nice. I haven't really played a lot of these video games. I feel like well enough to give a verdict. So if I were to say one, it's got to be Lego Star Wars, just because of the nostalgia reasons. That's the only reason, because I haven't really dived into a lot of the other games as deeply. Yeah. All right. Let's jump into books and comics. I just want to kind of just run through them quick, because I think it's important to note that one of the first things that Disney did when they bought Lucasfilm was that in 2014, Disney made almost all of the books, the expanded universe. They made it non-canon, or they called it Legends. And people, I remember, were pissed at this. But I think it was a smart thing to do, because if Disney were to make all these movies, and then they'd have to balance between tiptoe on these eggshells of every single expanded universe book that had come out, especially things that take place after episode 6, it would have been impossible to weave a cohesive story while fitting into all that. So I think it was smart. And even before, I was looking it up, apparently there was even even George Lucas was didn't know about all the canon. There was 5 levels of canon according to the holocron is what they called it. There was G canon, which was George Lucas / film canon, T canon, which was television canon, C canon, which was continuity canon. This is all from Star Wars Wikipedia. S canon, which was secondary canon, D canon, which was detours canon, and N canon, which was non-canon. This was all. So Disney came in and was like, we're not doing that. So I think that was a smart decision to do.
Yeah, that's a lot to balance out. But at the same time, you keep on saying it was a smart thing to do, and then I keep on just going to the sequels.
Yeah,
and I'm was it though?
No, I know, but I think it was cool because Filoni and Favreau still take a lot of inspiration from Legends.
Yeah, from that stuff. Yeah,
and the new books that have come out, I think I've heard good things about the Thrawn books, the Aftermath trilogy, which is after the events of Episode 6. In comics, there's a character called Dr. Aphra, who is it's a Star Wars Marvel crossover where she's a criminal archaeologist who has special interest in ancient weapons and Jedi artifacts, and it just sounds really interesting from what I've heard. Do you guys have any comics or books you have high respect or want to talk about briefly before we jump into the final verdict?
It's not going to be my field in this case. Haven't had the time to.
Matt, have you read
deep.
any of the books?
I hate reading.
Okay.
not.
You're I do it enough for my job, man. With all this.
I was about to say I'm doing a lot of reading right now, so it's just kind of in my spare time. I don't want to do any more reading.
Oh my god. I have this box. When I was working at the library at PCAD, they were trying to get rid of a bunch of books. So I have a bunch of these, Star Wars...
Oh.
Just, random tales and all this stuff. And I have no idea where these are in the canon now.
Oh, yeah. I think...
out of all those things...
In some of the older books, there was, I remember my dad had a lot of the older books like that. And I don't know if in, one of the first few pages, they often had, a map or a timeline of all the books that were released up to that point, and it was the most confusing thing I had ever seen, and that was back in 2008 before any of the sequel stuff had come out. So I don't know if that's in that book or not, but I remember seeing that map and just being just completely overwhelmed as a little 9-year-old.
I'm trying to see if any of them have it.
I like the Darth Bane books. I like those a lot. All right, let's jump into kind of final verdict. So again, this October marked 10 years since Disney bought Star Wars. Has Disney failed George Lucas? My mind, overall, in my opinion, I think it's a good thing that Disney has bought Star Wars. I think we've gotten so much content because of it, and it does suck because we're sometimes getting quantity over quality, but in that quantity, we are getting some quality, and I'm loving the quality.
There's a lot of cues.
Yeah, so, and their streaming shows, they're getting a lot of that right. So, honestly, just going through all this made me realize just how much Disney has churned out. It's a lot. What do you guys think?
I think that's really well said, because it's hard to do quantity. Well, yeah, no, it's hard to do quantity. And it's very easy for all of that to go to shit. You could just be churning out a bunch of crap.
Wait, what do you mean? It's hard to do quantity, but at a high level? What do you mean? You're saying the sheer amount they're doing is that's
yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So, and that it's also even more impressive that they are having quality along with that.
That some spaghetti is sticking to the wall.
Yeah.
What do you think, Matt? Is it a good decision?
I would completely agree. I think, as we've mentioned, it didn't start out great, but it has turned a corner, at least it's starting to turn the corner more successfully. So I am excited to see what they have in store.
Yeah, and even from a technological standpoint, if Disney didn't buy Lucasfilm, we wouldn't have these new Disney Plus shows pioneering this new technology of virtual production, which would literally which has literally changed the landscape of filmmaking. So it'd be really interesting to see like what would have happened if that didn't happen. And like I think George Lucas was slowing down after the reception of the prequels, and I don't think he planned to make much more with Star Wars. But it is interesting because the legacy of George Lucas is like pushing the boundary with technology and film technology and making it easier to make movies. And I think because he sold it to Disney with virtual production and everything, at least in that aspect,
that legacy was able to continue.
Legacy is continuing well. So I think that is really cool. And finally, we got Baby Yoda. So how can we complain? Ooh, the end. That was a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Matt, for joining us.
Of course.
Oh, I forgot to show off. I have a Star Wars Christmas sweater on. Any last minute things you want to say, Matt, or anything you'd like to promote while you're here?
No, I mean, thanks for having me. It's always been a pleasure.
Thank you for coming back every time we ask you to just talk about Star Wars. All right, we will jump into the next segment with TTTT. Thank you, Matt, again.
Yeah.
Boosh. All right, here we are. TTTT. You ready, Daniel? We're going to rush through these again.
Yeah.
All right. Did you know that Dave Filoni almost missed his interview to work on Star Wars? Yes, I've told you this before, but...
Yeah. What?
How
can you miss that? What?
Before Dave Filoni was hired to work on the Clone Wars show, he was working on Avatar: The Last Airbender at Nickelodeon. Even back then, he was a huge Star Wars fan and would constantly talk about Star Wars with his fellow Nickelodeon employees. They would tease him because he talked about it so much, until one day he got a call from the secretary at Lucasfilm who asked him to come in and interview for an animation position. He thought it was a prank call, though, and literally almost hung up. Filoni thought the SpongeBob animators were pulling a prank on him down the hall. Luckily, after a few awkward exchanges, he realized it was legit, so he flew to San Francisco, met with George Lucas, and got the job. And the rest is history.
Imagine if he just totally blew that.
Dude, that would suck.
Else from him.
I know.
Dude.
Thank goodness. All right, you ready to jump into the draft?
Yes.
So
yes.
Did I tell you what we're doing this week? Sorry if I did.
I don't think you
I
did.
think I have. Maybe a while ago. I think I mentioned it, but I didn't text it to you. So we're doing Star Wars content produced since Disney bought Lucasfilm, which should be not too hard to come up with because we just talked about it all. So basically the stuff we just talked about. So you are first.
Mandalorian.
Really? No! Fine, then I'll take Rogue One.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking again, storylines,
Yeah, you have more room to grow.
Yeah, I have more room to grow. Rogue One, I love. It's my favorite Star Wars movie, which is why it hurts. But
yeah,
we kind of already know what happens in between. Anywho, next. God, I'm only thinking about the shows now. Andor.
Oh, Andor. Okay. Yep, that was going to be my number 4. I will choose Clone Wars Season 7 then. I freaking love Clone Wars Season 7. Wait. So you have...
I'm stuck on the shows, man. I'm just saying shit.
No, you have Andor, but I have Rogue One. So I know I can spoil how he dies, but you'll never know. But yeah, dude, Clone Wars Season 7, dude, just the updated animation style, the fact that we got it back in the first place, and Ahsoka, everything, I mean, the Martez sisters brings it down a little bit, but the ending, dude, just still elevates it.
Well, since you got us in the animation, I'm going to say Rebels.
Okay, fair. I'm going to say Tales of the Jedi, then. Wait, I just love the connection it made with Dooku, and the depth we got with Dooku and Qui-Gon. What did you like about Rebels?
I just loved all the new connections. Seeing the different range of characters that we had in the show.
Yeah.
Seeing what it's like to have a Jedi through Kanan and how his arc was. I mean, he's a Jedi, but he has to figure out his own way of becoming that knight that he wanted to, and then him holding that true.
Thrawn also. I totally get that.
Thrawn was amazing.
All right. Next.
I'm blanking on content.
You got video games. Movies.
I'm not going to be touching any of the sequels, man.
What about Solo?
That's weird to think about that. Rogue One's I feel like the only good one that came out after. Anywho, okay, no, you said games, so I'm gonna go with Fallen Order.
Dang it!
Because the story in that was muy caliente.
Yeah, that's fair. I will say, even though I never finished it, so I guess it's not too much of a loss for me. I'm gonna say Visions. Just because for the craftsmanship of the animation. Wait, you never finished
Visions or Fallen Order?
Fallen Order. I'm going to say Visions for the craftsmanship of the animation style. I just love how unique it is. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, no, that's a good pick. We're going to do Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Okay, yeah, fair. You like the campaign a lot.
New one. Yeah, dude, I love that campaign so much. That campaign was great, and multiplayer. Like I do like the multiplayer.
It's got you got multiplayer and the campaign single player. It's got a diverse playbook there for you.
Mm-hmm,
All right, diverse player. I'm gonna say, yeah, it's kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel now. I will say Last Jedi, just to shake people up.
Jesus.
All
Just
right.
a Bad Batch.
That was actually next on my list, but I wanted to shake people up. All right, ready to jump into patron shoutouts?
Yeah, hit me with them.
Cubic Stars Music, Booshka, Patron, Lori, Frank, Rick, Lisa, Evan, Tony. Thank you so much for pledging the tier. To get you the shout out, you can support us over Patreon. Links down in the description. You get the audio episode, early special benefits, cool perks, all that jazz, and more. Thank you sincerely to our patron supporters. We seriously, really sincerely appreciate it. All right, ready to jump into cool comments.
Yeah, what do we got?
All right, we got so Josh McIntyre said on your Daniel's Games That Inspired You episode, I thought the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special was so funny. It was so cool to see Groot that wasn't a skinny teen anymore. Yeah, let's just briefly go over our quick thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy. Actually, no, we can do that in the holiday episode, which is in like 2 weeks because we've been recording for too long. All right, so we'll talk about that in a bit. Overall, I liked it. That's a little sneak peek, but we will talk about that. So subscribe for that.
Overall, yes.
Yeah. Josh McIntyre also commented that he's going to have to buy a VR headset to play your game when it comes out, Daniel. Everyone check out Daniel's game.
I appreciate that. And
it's coming out this month. All right.
23rd.
Ready for the introduction?
Yep, tell me when.
When?
We just talked about what we want to talk about. Now we're done.
Thank you seriously, sincerely so much, everyone. All right, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.